Space Marine 2. Do the law breaks bother anyone else? Now, before we get into this, I do want to preface this entire video by saying I like this game. Like, I really like this game. I enjoy playing it. It's really fun with friends. Not too interested in playing with randoms, but sometimes can't always get a friend online to record a video. So I'm not sure who these two people I'm with, but apologies. Now, if you are new here, though, because this is my first time actually doing a video on Space Marine 2. So yeah, if you are new here, hi, I'm Dod. I like to complain about things because I find it funny. And in this video, I'm going to be going over completely unimportant things because it's a game that kind of bother me because they're not following the law of the Warhammer 40k verse. Now, before we get too far further, another caveat, I am pretty new to the Warhammer 40k lore, maybe 5 years or so, and most of it comes from either watching a gross amount of Lootin, Wes Hammer and Major Kill. Read into that what you will. However, I do also have my own collection of books on Audible. I'm kind of just picking ones that I'm interested in rather than going for the most lore heavy ones for the moment. In short, I kind of know what I'm going to be going on about in this video, but I wouldn't be surprised if what I say isn't 100% accurate because there's an obscure book somewhere, which I clearly haven't read, that basically says I'm full of shit. But I'm going to be sticking to mostly what I know or what I can figure out and going over some of the lore breaks in this game that for some weird reason just really bother me because in my head it was so damn easy to do. But I also kind of understand why they didn't do that, and it's quite simply just to at least give a different look or appearance or style, to be perfectly honest. Now, pretty much everything I'm going to be going over here is literally just going to be limited to Codex-compliant chapters. So if your argument against what I'm going to be saying is, well, the Space Wolves don't do that, that's probably because the Space Wolves don't do anything unless they feel like it, and that's normally hitting something with an axe. So first up is these guys, Sniper. And I don't know why this one actually bothers me the most. Technically speaking, throughout the whole Warhammer 40k lore, nothing has ever been really referred to when used in reference to an actual Astartes, Space Marine Legion. Nothing has really been called a sniper. Pre-Primaris, we had Scout Marines, and for, again, Codex-compliant chapters, this would be within the 10th Company. These are newly created Astartes. I think is it neophytes they're called? I could be wrong. And the role that they would play would be essentially a sniper and other reconnaissance-styled missions. They're simply just called Scout Marines. Now, with Primaris, a lot of the Scout Marines are broken up into 3 sections, and all 3 of these sections are called Vanguard. Wait a minute, that's another class in the... Never mind. We have Vanguard Infiltrators. Their specific role is to sneak behind enemy lines, disrupt communications, and basically just blow up anything they can get their hands on, as well as to just give a more detailed report on what it is they are able to see, find, figure out, any form of intel or perhaps even any form of tech that they might want to get hold of, analyze, scrutinize, etc, etc. They're basically saboteurs. That's literally it. We then have Vanguard Suppressors. The ways in which these work, they're basically lightly armoured daredevils with a jump pack. They still use the Phobos armour, much of 10th Companies do. However, they do have a jump pack or a grav shoot, something. But they also have an autocannon, and basically they will be the first response to enemy armour. So if the enemy is bringing in tanks or any other type of armoured mechanised force, these guys will be the first ones to go in. They fly above the battlefield, do a bunch of autocannon shots, and then get the hell out of there. After that, we have the Vanguard Eliminator. Now, this is quite literally what the sniper is in the game. They are snipers, but they're not called snipers, they're called eliminators. Now, for eliminators that are particularly good at what they do within the 10th company, if they so choose to or are ordered to, they can join the more regular or traditional Adeptus Astartes strike force as an eliminator, but it will only ever limit them to the 9th company, of where they basically just play the role of an assassin. That's literally it. So yeah, technically the sniper class doesn't exist, and it really bothers me. I just kind of wish they would just rename it Eliminator, please. Now, I'm aware this is very nitpicky, but this is going to be the entire video, so strap up. Now, this next one's a little bit more of a lore break. We have the Vanguard, and I am doing this intentionally, because what I would like you all now to do, if you are a fan of the Space Marine 2 game, maybe not so much the lore, but I'd like you to go into Google and just type in Space Marine Vanguard. Look at the images that you get. You'll basically see what I've literally just spoken about: the infiltrators, the eliminators, and the suppressors. However, now what I want you to do is type in Space Marine Reaver, R-E-I-V-E-R. You should get images that look like this. Now, the job of a Reaver, as far as I can figure out, I've read one book about them so far, or that has them actively in, is they've got to be like a weird mix between Raven Guard and Space Wolves. Like, all of them, regardless of their legion. The Raven Guard side of it is they need to sneak in to wherever it is they're told to sneak into. They sneak in, they can't be detected. And then when someone says go, they turn into a Space Wolf and just, I don't know, activate their inner blender and go nuts and kill everything. And then after all the killing is done, they go back to their Raven Guard mode and stealthy, and then go to the next target. And then they'll be like, in position, sir. And then the sir goes, go! And then they activate blender mode again. The two legions that are actually really, really exceptionally good at utilizing their Reaver squads are Raven Guard, for obvious reasons, and White Scars, which I actually found quite interesting. But yeah, so if you're wondering who the Raven Guard champion is likely going to be, it's going to be Vanguard, when they're not actually a Vanguard at all, they're Reavers, which is like, this is just again, change the name. Up next is annoyingly my favourite class so far, and that is Heavy. There's no such thing as Heavy. Again, like, I don't know where they're getting these names from. I suppose you could argue they're just overly generalising, because, to be honest, within the Heavy spectrum, you could literally make 3 separate classes depending on the way in which you wanted to go. Now, pre-Primaris, it kind of looks like this dude is wearing Librarius armor, but then he wouldn't be wearing Librarius armor because he'd be classed as what's called a Devastator, and the only real difference between what you would normally see as like a tactical marine and a Devastator is the backpack would be slightly larger to account for a larger battery pack, extra ammunition, etc., etc. Yeah, they looked and wore the same, minus they just had a bigger backpack. That's literally it. Now, with the Primaris, what they are wearing is the Gravis Pattern power armor. Gravis Pattern is normally reserved for typically company captains that want to use it. A lot of the captains are allowed to just basically pick their own war gear, as long as they're not absolutely required to play a specific role. That being said, a lot of them will most likely just do what they want anyway, because they're captains of a company. They're allowed. Now, the most prominent Space Marine archetype that utilizes Gravis armor is the Aggressor Squad. And if you'd like to know what the Aggressor Squad does, watch the cutscene where Lord Calgar just drops in and just turns everything into mincemeat with a wave of just everything die. That's literally what the Aggressor Squad does. He's wearing Gravis power armor. He has the weapons that are typically affiliated with the Aggressor Squad power armor, which is basically, I don't actually know what they're called, but they look like power fists, but they've got guns attached to them. Or it could be a chain fist, or in the case of salamanders, who absolutely love their Aggressor armor, they have like hand flamers. I don't know what they're called. I'm sorry. I wish I did. But yeah. Factions that absolutely, or legions that absolutely love the Gravis armor are the Iron Hands Salamanders. Iron Hands love the gun variants, and I'm really, really annoyed that the champion for the heavy is a friggin' ultra. Like, why wasn't it Iron Hands or Salamanders? Why? It makes no sense. And obviously the Salamanders like the Gravis armor for their extra flamers, but the one that is quite interesting is actually the Black Templars. They don't tend to use the extra bolty things. They just like having really big bulky armor and then a sword that's like 3 times their size, and they just activate blender mode as well. So yeah, the three legions that really like their Gravis armor are Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Black Templars. The next use of Gravis armor is actually an interceptor squad, and these guys are probably akin to what we would call the assault marine, but they don't use big hammers. There are some factions that still like to use, I keep saying factions, legions that still like to use their interceptor squads. They're not really classed as interceptor squads though, with the Gravis armor, jump pack, and then something like a thunder hammer, Blood Angels, or lightning claws, Raven Guard. But most Primaris Marines interceptor squads will use Gravis armor, their jump packs, and then we'll have a twin rapid firing assault bolters. Essentially these guys are a human shaped A10 Warthog. Yeah. They sometimes also like to use plasma weaponry, but that's a little bit rarer. And then the final one, which is kind of where I feel like where they got their idea of heavy from, they utilise Gravis power armor again, and they are probably more akin to what a Devastator squad would be, utilising heavy weapons, much like the heavy does, but it's melter rifles, heavy melter rifles, and multi-melters. That's it. They don't use the heavy bolter. The Devastator squads are still part of the tactical assault marine variants that utilise heavy bolters, and I think plasma caster or whatever it's called is still one of the weapons they use, but generally speaking these are still part of a tactical assault marines kit. They are just the gunner in their 4 to 9 man squads. So yeah, like the 3 types you could potentially move around here would be the aggressors, like I spoke about, the interceptors, which are a jump pack variant flying around A10 Warthog, and then the final one, which is probably more akin to what the heavy actually is, which is eradicators. No such thing as a heavy, sorry. It just bothers me. And I think the main thing that bothers me here is you so could have gone down the aggressor route, and that would have been so cool. So cool. Really, I'm just salty over the fact that the heavy champion is a blue boy. No. Why is it a blue boy? Why? Get rid. The only worthwhile heavy the Ultramarines have is friggin' Rabute Gilliman. So unless I can play as a Primarch, just change it. Now, the worst defender out of all of these is actually one of my favourite classes, and that is the Assault. And the reason is one of my favourite classes is because Thunder Hammer. It needs to be buffed, though. I don't feel like it's Thunder Hammery enough. However, the reason this is the worst defender is quite simply it doesn't exist within Primaris chapters anymore. There are some legions that will make use of their assault interceptors, but they won't take in the dual pistol things and will opt for something like the two-handed Thunderhammer, but this is normally restricted to chapters like the Blood Angels, or sometimes they use Lightning Claws, like I said earlier, with like the Raven Guard. However, there are now what are called assault intercessors, not interceptors, which is weird. And basically, these are just tactical marines, but they opt for 2 one-handed weapons, typically like a bolt pistol, heavy bolt pistol. Sometimes they just like throwing grenades, frack and crack, hand flamers, plasma pistols, and they will spam these to get close to the enemy. And the moment they get close to the enemy, they'll utilize things like power fists, power swords, chain swords, and the only exception to this rule is the sergeant for their squad will always have a thunder hammer. Now, I can't really find any decent picture of this other than the models, and this is it. Yeah, they're all, as you can see, dual wielding in some manner, chainsword and a pistol, or some have got like a heavy bolt pistol and a knife, and then there's one crazy dude that's got a hand flamer and a friggin' Thunderhammer, because he's clearly the coolest guy in the squad. Now I'm about to upset about 90% of the community. Bulwark! Right, where do we start with this one? There have been many stories of Space Marines that favour a power sword. However, they tend to just be tactical Marines that have excelled at their swordplay, and to recognise and show appreciation for their talents within swordplay, their sergeants or lieutenants will get them permission to have a power sword. Lucius did this during the pre-heresy era. A more notable one of recent lore would be Lion Return of the Forest, where there is a character called, I think it was Kai, it might have been another one, but he essentially just likes swordplay and happened to at one point come across a power sword. Now he has a power sword, that's literally it. As for the overall Bulwark playstyle with a Storm Shield, which are typically reserved for lieutenants or even captains within a respective squad or company, there's 2 legions really that would make full use of the Bulwark class. That would be the Castellans, which are exclusive literally to only the Black Templars. And again, the rank of Castellan, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, is essentially a lieutenant. Like, that is the lieutenant equivalent within the Black Templars. The only other faction that would typically go down this route would be the Dark Angels. However, this type of war gear would be reserved for the 1st or 2nd company, mostly the 1st, and it would be exclusive to the 1st company is called the Deathwing, but they would also be wearing, I can't find if there's been any confirmation as to whether the Deathwing Knights, specifically, Deathwing and Deathwing Knights are, I believe, a little bit different. However, the Deathwing Knights, I can't, like I said, can't really find if there is any confirmation as to whether they have become Primaris, but as far as I'm aware, within what we would be talking about within like the Bulwark spectrum, they would be wearing the Indomitus Terminator armor, or Indomitus Tactical Dreadnought armor, however you want to call it, Terminator armor. And they look absolutely badass. Now, with all that being said, I'm sure that we have all seen within the game Space Marine 2, when Lord Calgar comes down, he has 2 knights either side of him. Bulwark, essentially they're doing the whole Bulwark class thing. This is also true within lore. However, the difference here is these are going to be hand-picked top-tier veterans that have excelled within that style of combat that Lord Calgar would want with him as his personal retinue and guard at all times. I believe Lord Calgar's personal guard is referred to as the Blade Guard, and Lord Guilliman's, or the Primarch Guilliman, Rabute Guilliman, his is called the Victrix Guard, although I can't find anywhere whether the Victrix Guard have been made Primaris. I imagine they would be like among the first, to be perfectly honest, but still I can't find anything about that. So the style of Bulwark, or is like the play style of Bulwark, is very much a thing within the Warhammer 40k lore. However, the lore break here is quite simply, they would be like the absolute creme de la creme of the first company veterans that have been selected as the guard for their lord or primarch, chapter master, etc, etc. There is no way that they would be running around killing Tyranids unless their lord decides to go running around killing Tyranids, and I'm pretty sure Rabute has better things to do, and we only really see Calgar come in towards the end of the Space Marine campaign. So the lore break here isn't quite so much of they don't exist. They don't exist in the sense of them being numerous, unless you're looking at Black Templars and Dark Angels exclusively. So good choice on making a Dark Angel the champion for the Bulwark. I would have preferred it to be Black Templar, because one of the things I'd really hope for you to actually bring in at one point is bring in Deathwing as a class. Bulwark has a good array of like support and damage talents and perks. I kind of want, like, my idea for how prestige would work is you can like upgrade the class into like a separate tree kind of thing, and I'd kind of want Deathwing Knight to be one of them, and rather than go down like the whole supporty route, just literally just spec everything into I'm going to hit this thing like a truck. So yeah, that's where I would want it to go. So I would prefer it to have been Black Templar rather than Dark Angel. But yeah, the law break quite literally is there is no way the character class of Bulwark would be running around killing Terminators, and he certainly wouldn't be taking orders from Lieutenant Titus or Captain Acheron. Like, no. Even though he might not hold that sort of rank, he is a veteran of the First Company and assigned as the personal guard or something like Lord Calgar. The only one giving him orders would be Lord Calgar or Primarch Rabute Gilliman, and that's just like within the like just Ultramarines chapters. Now there is a massive caveat to basically everything that I've just said, and because I can already hear people typing away in the comments. Yes, I'm still new to the lore, and within basically every book that I have read that is based around the Space Marines, there is always at least 5 dudes with storm shields and power swords, and they're just everyday normal Marines. Lore-wise, on how a chapter or company is made up, the only ones really specifically getting a power sword and a storm shield would be very, very, very talented lieutenants, a captain, or the retinue of honor guard to some form of high-ranking official or Astartes, etc., etc., or then again the First Company veterans anyway. At least that's within lore, but then obviously every time a book comes out, there's always one nutter or 2 nutters somewhere that are running around like absolute crazies with a power sword and a storm shield. Or if you've read The Burning of Prospero, I'm pretty sure the Space Wolves have like 3 bolters between them, and everyone else has like a power weapon of some description. Like, so there are obviously lore breaks here. I'm just going for like how lore-wise typically a company or a chapter is made up. And outside of First Company and higher ranks, there's not really a lot for Power Sword and Storm Shield. Power Sword and Heavy Bolt Pistol, yes. Power Sword and Storm Shield, not so much. Weirdly, it's probably just a gap in the lore and I'm reading way too much into it, but yeah. Now obviously there is one final class on this list that we haven't touched on yet, and that is obviously the good old Tactical Marine, and honestly, I've got nothing here. Like, it's a really good class, it's portrayed really well, the abilities and like variants of it all is perfectly within lore. I got nothing. However, just because this is probably one of the longer videos that I've done in a while, I've got one more for you, and this one actually really, really, really annoyed me. However, there is also going to be a spoiler here, so if you haven't finished the campaign, just click away now. It's fine. Don't worry, you don't have to watch the rest. It's cool. Thank you for sticking around for this long. They gone yet? They gone? Right. My final lore break, and the one that honestly, I nearly just Alt F4'd the game. How, in the name of the Emperor, did this guy become a chaplain? Seriously, Leandros became a chaplain. Really? Now don't get me wrong, it was one hell of a plot twist. I weirdly didn't actually see it coming. I was having too much fun just hitting things and shooty mukbang. Probably should have seen it coming, because when I look back on it, it's like, dude, that was like kind of obvious. But like, still, how? The vote for chaplaincy always has to go through, normally like the upper echelon. It would be all of the captains, the Reclusiarchy, the Librarius, and then the final decision would typically come from the chapter master. The chapter master, even at the time, was still Lord Calgar, and as we know, Lord Calgar and Titus were about as friendly as a chapter master and at the time a captain and then later a lieutenant could actually be. So I now need to try and remember my backstory lore within the Space Marine video games. At the end of Space Marine 1, Leandros contacts the Inquisition and accuses Titus of heresy or corruption, etc., etc. Due to the ranking system, it basically goes Emperor, Primarchs, Ecclesiarchy, which is within the Inquisition as well, or the Inquisition is within the Ecclesiarchy, the Church. So once this accusal has happened, it's going to be very, very unlikely that a Primarch is going to step forward and be like, no, actually, like, we trust this guy. He's got better things to do than worry about one single Space Marine. So that's not going to happen. Obviously, the Emperor is a little bit preoccupied with being extra crispy on a golden throne. So that's not going to happen. The only way in which they can then mitigate suspicion, and probably the only way in which the Inquisition would actually allow him to live, is if they inter him into what's called a Black Shield. This is a tour within the Death Watch. It is a very, very hazardous job, but it is typically only reserved for the top veterans of any company. As long as you absolutely excel, regardless of your legion, you can be transferred to the Death Watch. I think the minimum tour is like 100 years, but they're typically absolute top tier. Think of them like special forces within the Adeptus Astartes. However, as a punishment, you can be sent there as a Black Shield, which is basically, there's no records, they just want to get rid of you. Obviously, they could kill you, but you're actually, like, technically a pretty good guy. It's just something went wrong, like a bit of admin work or whatever, I don't know. They Black Shield you. No records, you're off to the Death Watch. If you return, typically all is forgiven. If you don't return, you served your penance serving in the Death Watch, kind of thing. So that's literally all Lord Calgar can actually do for Titus. That being said, it is very clear and made apparent throughout the entire story that Titus isn't corrupted. He's not tainted by chaos. So Leandros made a false claim against a captain when at the time he was actually a new recruit within, I think, Captain Titus at the time in Space Marine 1. I think it was the second company. So Captain Titus is a very, very well respected captain. His second company, that's pretty up there. He's one of the youngest, I think. He's like 175 years old and has been within the Ultramarines chapter for like 150 years. He's a very, very well-known and well-respected captain within the Ultramarines, and this snot-nosed brat, Leandros, who is a new recruit within that chapter as well as the squad, accuses his captain falsely of corruption, and he becomes a the most likely, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a hell of a good story point and plot twist and very well done story-wise, but lore-wise, the most likely outcome would be that Lord Calgar would have given him a stupid mission that would have resulted in his death. Because how dare you do that to a brother, your captain? Like, if he was corrupted and showed more signs, great. Go you. Probably would have been promoted to chaplain on the friggin' spot. But there weren't very many signs other than he was like what was like the taint or whatever that Titus could do. Like he could hold something that people aren't meant to be able to hold. And yet Sisters of Battle conjure literal angels by singing. Like, come on. Yeah, Leandros should not be like it is. Lore-wise, it is so bad. So bad. He would be dead. Anyway, that is going to be the end of my rant. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I've probably made a bunch of mistakes in the lore, but if you have any points for me or good books to read or Audible, do let me know. Have fun. Good luck. Don't die. It's bad for the health.